Well, good morning, YouTube. All right, guys, today's video, we're going to be working on the power inverter and the mistakes that I made. Wouldn't you know it? Just ran the truck through the truck wash yesterday. Now, guys, here mowing today. Where'd he go? He's over there somewhere. Yeah, kicking up all kinds of dust. All right, guys, so you may be asking, why do I have two multiplus-2s here? Yeah, what in the world could I need two of them for? Well, it's because I have to replace the one that I had already installed. So if you haven't seen the previous video where I installed the multiplus-2 along with a DC to DC charger, the bus bars, pretty much a whole off-grid system other than the solar panels, because I was reusing the solar panels that are existing on the roof of Goliath already. Check that video out, I'll put a link here. But I made a fatal mistake, and I'm hoping that this video will stop somebody else from making the same mistake that I made. So it was a good week and a half or 2 weeks after installing the Victron multiplus-2 into Goliath. We were down at Daytona Beach Bike Week, and we were working the rally, and we had an issue. In the middle of our busy day, we had the air conditioner running inside Goliath. Now, we were hooked to shore power, so we were not running on the inverter. It was working simply as they passed through. Katie went to go microwave something and we lost the circuit. And when I went out to go check it, it looks like we hit burnt up a line. All right, guys, you can see here as I open up this unit, the damage that happened inside. Apparently the connection just wasn't good and there was too much resistance, I guess, the way that I had the connections made. Now you can see in here the damage caused from the heat. It completely melted the terminal blocks, and of course you can see a lot of smoke damage in there as well, and even some of the transistors and electrical components on the board internally had melted off. So this unit is definitely no longer usable, and this is why we're replacing with a new unit. Now, the ironic thing is, we actually had a subscriber there at the time, Ratfink, or Ron, he goes by Ratfink on here. He was there, he saw the whole thing, he saw me scrambling, mad dash, trying to get everything fixed, because when this happened, I had to disconnect power immediately. And with the power disconnected, Katie's computer wasn't working, our displays weren't working. We were basically out of business temporarily. So I had to run back there, disconnect the inverter, wire the plug directly to the house line so I could go straight to the shore power and bypass the inverter, and it was a huge pain in the butt. These inverters are not cheap. This is a very expensive unit. I want to say it was like $1,700 or so, don't quote me on that. And I purchased this through Northern Arizona Wind and Sun, I believe is the name of the company, but I'll try to put links in the description as well. And I have to give them props in this. Keep in mind, they didn't give me any YouTuber specials. I paid for this with my own money. No sponsorships, no discounts, or nothing like that. And basically they're telling me that the problem I had with the inverter was my own fault. Now, at first I had a hard time accepting this because you guys know how OCD I am about installing stuff. The nice thing was, they still warranted it. So I got to give them props for that. Even though in their mind, it was absolutely my fault. This is a $1,700 unit. They sent me a new one, and I got to love that. Definitely much respect to Arizona Wind and Sun and Victron Energy, because I guess they had to get it approved through Victron in order to make the warranty happen. All right, guys, so even though I was pretty confident that I did nothing wrong on the install, I finally received the new inverter back. So I sent a thank you letter to the distributor, for their help and warranting it and so on and so forth. But in that letter, I also asked, well, I stated, I'm pretty OCD about what I do, and I'm pretty confident that I did everything right. However, was there anything that I could have done to have prevented this from happening or happening again? One of the technicians called me back and we had a discussion, and from the best he could tell based on the pictures that I had sent him was that I didn't have enough lead out on the wires. So what I mean by that is, here's the lead. I guess I didn't have enough wire stripped. Now to me, this looks fine. Yeah, the green one's a little short. But you know, typically, when hooking things up, you only leave that 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch bare, especially with like a screw down type terminal. But the Victron does not use a screwed down terminal. It's more of a friction lock. So once you shove the wire into the connection, there's a spring tension piece in there that locks it down. And I thought that was sufficient. He said that you definitely need a little bit more. And they recommended using ferrules. So I found some crimp sleeves, same thing as ferrules, just different wording. Bought them in 2 different sizes. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna measure how far in these terminals actually go, because he says you want to use as much as you possibly can in there. Now I've looked at this real quick off camera, and my concern is that I can fit a lot more in there than what the ferrule is going to cover on the wire. So I don't know that that's going to make much sense, but we're going to go ahead and check that out and see. All right guys, so right here I'm working with the old unit that's burned up, that way I don't take any chance of damaging the new one. But I'm going to use this large pick, and basically this is like a radiator hose removal tube, but it's about the same diameter as the 6-gauge wire that we're using. It's got a nice point to it, so I should be able to insert this in to its full depth and find out exactly how much insertion we should have. So right there I'm just touching. If I push in, all right, that's in as far as it goes right there. So now I'm going to mark it with a piece of tape right at the end. So now we'll know exactly how much goes in. All right, and as you can see, it's definitely a little bit longer than what I had stripped off. Now, also note that inside here, you can see there's a slight shoulder where the insulation should stop. So I'm going to try to measure that as well and subtract that from the overall. All right guys, so I stuck this small screwdriver in there and basically just rested it at the point of engagement. And so that is how much insulation should actually go into the outer hole. And then everything after that should be bare conductive material. All right guys, so if I take the two together, looks like I should have a good 3/4 to 7/8 of an inch. It's hard to get an exact measurement here, probably 3/4. I think I'm a little far this way. Yeah, so it looks like I should have a good 3/4 of an inch of conductor sticking out past my insulation. All right, so I've marked my wires at 3/4 of an inch. Now let's go ahead and peel back that insulation. All right, and that's definitely a significant difference over what I had, so maybe they're onto something here. Well, I did it. It's not pretty, but we got a good solid conductor there. I may try to smooth it out just a little bit here so it doesn't catch. Maybe that'll work. Now I do have these longer ferrules, but they're also a larger diameter, and they're just really sloppy on the wires. So I don't think that is the answer either. Yeah, see, that'll actually slide down over the insulation, which we don't want that. All right guys, so this is my end result. Got 2 ferrules on each one, and I even put a ferrule on the ground wire, but I folded it over because the gauge was so much different. So I'm gonna test fit them in here and see if I like them. And if that's the case, we'll carry that over to the new unit. All right guys, so the test fit is in there. Now, when you're using 6-gauge wire in such a narrow area like this, it is very challenging to get everything to line up and in there. So it's hard to do in record. I had to use both hands. But they're in there, you can yank on it. They're good and tight. Now, I'm not crazy about my ground one, but because of the way I folded it over, it's a little shorter, and this was just test purposes. I'm gonna cut all this off and redo it on the final assembly, so I'll leave that ground wire a little bit longer. And I may not actually put the ferrule on the ground wire. Maybe I'll just leave a little extra length and I will fold it over and then just insert it that way. Obviously the ground wire is a much smaller gauge anyways, so I don't think the ferrule was necessary on there. Also, as I got them in there, I did use a pair of needle nose pliers to grab hold of the wires and forcefully make sure that they were inserted all the way into the connector. And I know there's definitely a little bit more conductive material there, so maybe this is the answer, and hopefully it'll fix the problem. Guys, one more thing I'm going to do on this install. As you can see, the area in here is very difficult to work with, and when this is installed in the lower cabinet, as you saw in the other video, there's a wall right here, making it even harder to get to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fully install the AC outline on this, and I'm going to leave some slack. I bought a junction box I'm going to mount to the wall. That way all the connections at the inverter can be done here on the bench to make sure that they are good connections. I can double check, triple check before I even mount it underneath. And then I will just take that lead, run it to the junction box, and hook it to the AC outlines that actually go to the breaker box in Goliath. Also, our flexible cord for the AC in will also be done here, but that's just gonna have the plug end on it, so it plugs into the outlet that's in the box as well, just like you saw in the other video. All right, guys, as you can see, I've made all my connections. They're definitely engaged as far as they can possibly go. I do want to note that as I tightened down the keeper here, it did break. However, it is still very, very secure and not moving. But I think those could probably be made of a better material. And I wasn't putting a lot of force on it either. This unit really is a great unit. This connection system, though, I gotta be honest, I just don't like it. One, it's very difficult to work with in such a confined area, and I'm just not confident in its connection ability. Now, when I did talk to the tech center, I am one of only 2 instances they've ever seen this happen in, so I guess it's not a common problem. But I would almost think that to avoid it completely, they should just put lugs, just like they did here for the battery terminals. Just do the same thing here. Or a typical screw down like you would find in any kind of breaker box using this gauge of wire. It would be so much better of a contact, more pull resistance, the whole 9 yards, and it wouldn't have to be these plastic housings that are just going to melt when it gets hot. So that is my line out. Just going to go to my junction box here, which will then tie in and go to the breaker box in Goliath. Now this flexible lead here is what I was using for the line in, because I have a plug on the end. But as I peeled it back, I could see that, you know, I'm just not feeling comfortable with the degradation on that wire right there. It would probably be fine, but I'm not going to chance it. I've already burnt this thing up once. I'm not going to do it twice, so I'm going to wait to do the rest until I get a replacement for this. All right, so out with the old, and I found some new. This nice, fresh, clean leads. This should do the job right here. All right, guys, as you can see, now I got stripped back. Now we've got some nice, pretty copper there. So let's continue with the ferrule crimping. All right, guys, I decided just to put the single ferrule on there, so there is some stranded wire still hanging out past, but I think that will still give us a really good bite once we get in there to that connector. Now it's time to put it in. All right, guys, another thing I want to take note of is that there is a locking mechanism in here, and you can use a small screwdriver or pick or something to unlock it so that you can remove it. And the technician that I spoke to on the phone had actually recommended that when installing them, that I put something in there to keep the lock open, put the wire firmly in, and then remove the lock. So that's exactly what I've been doing. So I'm using another of these radiator picks, but it just has a 90-degree end on it. But it comes to a point, so I hold that in there, and then while that is in, I line up the wire, and then I'm using the needle nose to firmly push it in place, and then while I'm holding it there, I pull that pick out. I don't know if I can. Then now once it releases, I shouldn't be able to pull this wire back out. See, I'm tugging gently on it and it will not come out. I've done that with all of these. Now to double check, AC line out, same thing. Line 1 is black, same as AC in. PE is our ground, our bare wire. Line 2 is our red, just like it is on the AC in, and then the neutral is the white, just like on the AC in. So everything there matches. Everything is in, good, tight, and secure. As you can see, we're not connected to anything at the other side. That's still just excess that I'll cut the length later on. And well, guys, we're gonna have to put this project on hold because I have yet another fire to put out. Last night, overnight, our generator started to run really bad. Now, on board in Goliath, we have the Onan Genset Emerald Series 6500. And I've noticed that we've had some trouble with it lately. Like, it doesn't want to govern properly. Too much of a load, it just stalls it out rather than it governing up and producing power. When we were in Daytona, I checked it through the Victron Connect app, since we had the inverter and the shunt and everything all hooked up at that time. And it looked like the generator is only putting out about 2,300 watts when it should be around 6,500. And what's happening is, you know, at idle, 2,300 watts is probably fine, or maybe even excessive. But when the load kicks up, you know, the generator should be able to kick up and output a little bit more, and that just wasn't happening. So we've had a lot of trouble with that. Yesterday it started running really bad, started to knock a little bit, and you know, about 1 o'clock in the morning, it was just absolutely running terrible, like it was running on one cylinder. And I checked it, the governor was at absolutely full load, but yet it was still just barely running, and we couldn't run anything other than lights and a fan. So I pretty much wrote it off, and I just let it ride out that way. I figured, you know what, if it makes it through morning, I'll be amazed. But it was, they said it was 1 o'clock in the morning, and there was no place to go buy a replacement or even to do any repairs to it at that time. So the longer it ran, the better it was to keep our refrigerator going. So we just let it go. And about 4 o'clock in the morning, it finally shut off. I got up at 7 to check it, and it was out of fuel. I put fuel in it, and it did not want to fire back up. It just kicked and bucked and shook. So yeah, it's done. So early this morning, I ran out to Harbor Freight and I picked up a new Predator 3500. Now that's a much more efficient unit anyways, and 3500, we can still run one air conditioner. We can still run the microwave and stuff like that. We always turn off the AC when we run the microwave for the few moments anyways, so it'll be fine. And it's a much more fuel efficient unit, so I think I'll be happy about that. What sucks about having to do this is, well, two things really. One is I have a Predator 3500 sitting at home in North Carolina. We're in Florida, so it didn't do me any good. What really sucks about that is it was sitting right here on the floor in this trailer the day before we left to come here. I took it out thinking I wasn't going to need it because we got the onboard generator, and well, hindsight being 2020, just cost myself another $1,000 I didn't really need. But I'm sure we'll put the other generator to use, or I can always run them in parallel if I need to, and I can run the whole house, both ACs, everything, when they're parallel together. So anyway, I've got the new generator here, and it is running, and we're plugged in. For the moment, I just have it strapped to the tongue of the trailer, and I'm not really liking that. It's fine when we're sitting still. The problem is when we're driving down the road trying to get power to the house. So, and I've done this before, I've had to run a cord, but the cord I've got now, you see just running on the ground and running up to our power compartment. So I'm gonna have to find a way to extend this. This cord isn't long enough to do operation, but what I'll have to do, I'll end up running this cord up and probably zip tying it to here, which I've done before, and then I can run it around the corner. I actually have a zip tie right here, so I can run another zip tie, dangle it here, run another zip tie, dangle it here, run another zip tie, dangle it here, and then I just have to find a way to get it to come down into this box without getting caught up in a wheel or tire, which I have an idea of what I'm going to do there. But either way, that's got to take priority before I go installing the inverter back in. So for right now, we're going to put that on hold. But I want to make a point here is all these corrections that I made that the technician that I talked to suggested, none of those are in the Victron manual, and that is the purpose of this video. I don't want people to go out there and buy this inverter and then make the same mistake that I did. So watch this video before you install one. Well, hopefully you've already watched it by the time, you know, yeah, whatever. So hopefully you guys have seen this video before you go to install it, and you make sure to leave plenty of room there. That is the only thing they said that I could have done that would have caused this problem. So I'm hoping that that is fixed. Now we won't know for sure until we get this installed, and then the final test will be longevity. But I'll give you guys an update once I get this installed, and for now, that's it. So guys, I want to thank you for watching. I hope this is helpful, and I hope somebody out there learns from my mistake and doesn't burn up their Victron unit. So guys, thanks for watching, and until the next time I see you, keep those engines running. One more note I'd like to make about this, and this with the retainers, the little hold downs to keep the wires going into the unit. I don't understand when the AC in and the AC out both are designed for 50 amp split phase. Notice that the port to run this wire in is much larger than to run this one in. The studs on this one stick up much higher than on this one. This one was very challenging to get these nuts to start with this thicker gauge wire. And you saw earlier where I had broken the clip on this one. Well, this one was off of the old inverter and it was still good. So I took some of the casing off of this wire from where I had stripped the wires back, and I slid it over our line out wire just to give it a little bit more support as I tighten that down so it didn't break. Now it's really good and secure.